Did you know that Death Valley holds the record for the hottest air temperature ever reliably recorded on Earth? 134 degrees Fahrenheit measured at Furnace Creek on July 10, 1913. That Badwater Basin sits at 282 feet below sea level, making it the lowest point in North America, yet you can see Telescope Peak rising 11,049 feet above it, a vertical relief of 11,331 feet within the park boundaries, and that this brutally hot desert receives an average of only 2.36 inches of rain per year, yet occasionally experiences flash floods so powerful they reshape entire canyons in hours. Death Valley is not just the hottest, driest, and lowest place in North America. It is a landscape of impossible extremes where geology, climate, and life push the boundaries of what seems physically possible. A place where rocks mysteriously move across dry lake beds, mountains are painted in psychedelic colors, and organisms survive in conditions that would kill most life on Earth. Get ready, because today you're about to discover 35 incredible facts about Death Valley that break your brain, facts that reveal why this desert defies every expectation of what a valley should be. 35. The hottest temperature on Earth. Death Valley's Furnace Creek recorded 134 degrees Fahrenheit on July 10, 1913, the hottest air temperature ever reliably measured on Earth. This surpasses every other documented temperature, including Kuwait's 129 degrees Fahrenheit and Libya's disputed 136 degrees Fahrenheit record, later invalidated. But air temperature tells only part of the story. Ground temperatures measured by satellite reached 201 degrees Fahrenheit in 2007, hot enough to cause third-degree burns in seconds. Research by the National Park Service shows pavement temperatures routinely exceed 180 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, meaning you can literally fry an egg on the sidewalk. For perspective, 140 degrees Fahrenheit water causes third-degree burns almost instantly. Death Valley's ground is 60 degrees Fahrenheit hotter. This makes Death Valley hotter than most places humans have ever measured, approaching temperatures found on Mercury's surface. 34. The lowest point in North America. Badwater Basin sits at 282 feet below sea level, the lowest elevation in North America and the second lowest point in the Western Hemisphere after Laguna del Carbon in Argentina, 344 feet below sea level. This creates a depression so deep that if filled with water, it would form a lake nearly 300 feet deep, deeper than most lakes in the United States. The Badwater name comes from a small spring producing water so salty and mineral-laden it's undrinkable. What most people don't realize is that standing at Badwater, you're lower than many ocean trenches near shore, with the weight of the entire atmosphere pressing down with slightly more force than at sea level, though the difference is imperceptible to humans. 33. The extreme vertical relief from Badwater Basin at minus 282 feet to Telescope Peak at 11,049 feet, Death Valley contains 11,331 feet of vertical relief, greater elevation change than exists from the rim to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, approximately 6,000 feet. Both extremes are visible from certain viewpoints, creating one of the most dramatic topographic contrasts on Earth. The distance between lowest and highest points is only 15 miles as the crow flies, meaning the mountain rises at an average grade exceeding 14%, steeper than most roads legally allow. This extreme relief creates radical climate zones. When Badwater Basin records 120 degrees Fahrenheit, Telescope Peak can be 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit cooler with snow persisting into June. 32. The moving rocks mystery. At Racetrack Playa, rocks weighing up to 700 pounds mysteriously move across the dry lake bed, leaving tracks hundreds of feet long. This phenomenon baffled scientists for decades. Rocks appeared to move without human or animal intervention. In 2014, researchers finally documented the mechanism. During rare winter conditions, thin ice sheets form overnight across the playa. When morning sun melts the ice edges, light winds push the floating ice sheets, which drag rocks embedded in them across the mud beneath. The process requires perfect conditions: overnight freezing, thin ice, liquid water layer beneath, and sustained winds, occurring perhaps once per decade. Some tracks extend over 1,500 feet, meaning rocks traveled a quarter mile in a single event. 31. The driest place in North America. Death Valley receives an average of only 2.36 inches of rainfall annually, making it the driest location in North America. Some years record zero measurable precipitation. For comparison, the Atacama Desert in Chile, often called the driest place on Earth, receives approximately 0.6 inches annually in its driest areas, but Death Valley's extreme heat and low humidity create conditions where evaporation potential, over 150 inches annually, exceeds rainfall by 60-fold. This means a puddle that would last weeks elsewhere evaporates in hours here. Research shows some areas of Death Valley may not see rain for years at a time, creating conditions approaching Mars-level aridity. 30. The Devil's Golf Course Salt Formations. The Devil's Golf Course consists of massive salt crystal formations rising up to 3 feet high and extending across 40-plus square miles of valley floor. These jagged pinnacles form through repeated flooding and evaporation cycles over thousands of years. When rare rains dissolve salts, then evaporation recrystallizes them into ever larger formations. The salt deposits reach depths of 5+ feet in places, representing thousands of years of mineral accumulation. Early settlers said only the devil could play golf on it. Walking across the formations produces crackling sounds as salt crystals expand and contract with temperature changes. The formations literally grow and shift constantly, making the landscape acoustically active. 29. The Telescope Peak Snow Paradox. Telescope Peak receives enough winter snowfall that snow can persist into May at 11,000 plus feet elevation, creating the surreal contrast of skiing conditions visible from the hottest place on Earth just 15 miles away, where temperatures exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit simultaneously. The peak receives 25 to 30 inches of precipitation annually, over 10 times more than the valley floor, with most falling as snow between November and March. This creates alpine ecosystems with bristlecone pines and limber pines growing at elevations where temperatures can drop to minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit in winter. On a single summer day, you could theoretically ski in the morning at Telescope Peak and experience 130 degrees Fahrenheit heat at Badwater Basin in the afternoon. 28. The pupfish's isolated evolution. Devil's Hole pupfish, Cyprinodon diabolese, live in a single limestone cavern measuring only 15 feet by 60 feet, the smallest range of any vertebrate species on Earth. The entire population of 100 to 200 fish survives in water that maintains a constant 93 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, feeding on algae growing on a shallow rock shelf near the surface. These fish have been isolated for over 10,000 years. Since the end of the last ice age, when Death Valley's lakes evaporated, leaving pupfish populations stranded in isolated springs. Genetic analysis shows Devil's Hole pupfish diverged from other Death Valley pupfish populations 20,000 plus years ago, making them a distinct species. The population crashed to just 35 fish in 2013, but conservation efforts have stabilized numbers. 27. The Desert Gold Superbloom. When Death Valley receives rare winter rains, typically requiring 3+ inches between October and March, the valley floor can explode with wildflowers in a super bloom phenomenon. The 2016 super bloom drew over 200,000 additional visitors to witness millions of desert gold, Gyrrea canescens, lupines, and desert sunflowers, transforming the landscape from brown to brilliant yellow and purple. Seeds remain dormant in soil for years or decades, waiting for conditions favorable enough to germinate, requiring sufficient rainfall, proper timing, and mild temperatures. The blooms typically peak in late March to early April and last only 2 to 3 weeks before extreme heat kills the flowers. Super blooms occur on average every 10 to 15 years, making them rare enough that many visitors never witness one. 26. The Mesquite Flat Dunes Desert Paradox. The Mesquite Flat sand dunes rise up to 100 feet high and cover over 14 square miles despite Death Valley receiving almost no rainfall. The sand originates from the Cottonwood and Panamint Mountains, eroded over millennia and transported by winds funneling through the valley. These winds create star dunes, multi-directional peaks formed by variable wind patterns, and crescent-shaped Barcan dunes formed by unidirectional winds. What most people don't realize is the dunes represent only a tiny fraction of Death Valley's total sand. Most sand is trapped in other areas, making these dunes a concentration of mobile sand captured by local wind patterns. The dunes migrate slowly, moving several feet annually in the direction of prevailing Wins. 25. The Ubahabi Crater Volcanic Explosion. Ubahabi Crater is a 600-foot deep, half-mile wide volcanic mark crater created approximately 2,100 years ago. Recent research suggests possibly as recently as 800 years ago, when rising magma contacted groundwater, causing a massive steam explosion. The explosion ejected rock and debris across 6 square miles, with some material landing over a mile away. The crater walls expose volcanic ash layers and sedimentary deposits spanning thousands of years. What makes this extraordinary is that no lava flowed. The explosion was purely steam-driven, like a gigantic pressure cooker releasing. Geologists note the volcanic system beneath Death Valley remains active, meaning Ubahabi could erupt again given the right geological conditions, though no current signs suggest imminent activity. 24. The Artist's Palette Chemistry. Artist's Palette displays rock formations in vivid greens, purples, reds, and yellows, created by oxidation of different metallic compounds. Iron oxides create reds and pinks. Manganese produces purples and blacks. Mica creates greens, and volcanic ash contributes yellows. The colors are most vibrant in late afternoon sun when low-angle light intensifies the hues. These deposits formed from ancient hydrothermal activity, hot mineral-rich water percolating through rock-depositing metals that later oxidized. The one-way Artist's Drive Loop Road provides the best viewing, winding through hills that look hand-painted but are entirely natural geological processes made visible through erosion. 23. The 49ers' Deadly Crossing. In the winter of 1849 to 1850, a group of gold rush immigrants became stranded in Death Valley attempting a shortcut to California goldfields. The Bennett Arcane Party split from a larger wagon train, entering Death Valley thinking they could cross it in days. Instead, they became trapped for weeks, their oxen dying from lack of water and forage. The party split up, some attempting to walk out, others staying with wagons. 2 men, William Lewis Manley and John Rogers, walked 250 miles to settlements, obtained supplies, and returned to rescue the survivors a month later. When leaving, one survivor reportedly said, "Goodbye, Death Valley," giving the place its ominous name. One member died during the ordeal, though remarkably most survived the crossing. 22. The Harmony Borax Works Legacy. From 1883 to 1888, Chinese laborers harvested borax from Death Valley's salt flats, processing it at Harmony Borax Works and hauling it 165 miles to the nearest railroad in Mojave. The famous 20-mule teams pulled wagons loaded with 36 tons of borax across the desert in summer temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit, completing the 10-day round trip through some of Earth's most hostile terrain. Each wagon weighed 7,800 pounds empty, and loaded they carried 36.5 tons total, requiring 18 mules and 2 horses in precisely configured teams. The borax was used in detergents, glass, and ceramics. The operation demonstrated both human ingenuity and exploitation. Chinese workers endured brutal conditions for minimal pay, while company owners profited from the desert's mineral wealth. 21. The national park size. Death Valley National Park encompasses 3.4 million acres, larger than the state of Connecticut, 3.1 million acres, making it the largest national park in the contiguous United States. Only Alaska's parks exceed its size. The park is so vast it contains wilderness areas where some sections remain rarely or never visited by humans. Driving from the park's northern boundary to southern boundary requires over 200 miles, and the width spans approximately 140 miles east to west. The park contains over 1,000 miles of dirt roads and only several hundred miles of paved roads, meaning most of the park is accessible only by 4-wheel drive vehicle or on foot. This immensity creates opportunities for true wilderness solitude, but also dangers. Getting stranded in remote areas can be fatal. 20. The Flash Flood Catastrophe. Despite receiving less than 2.5 inches of annual rainfall, Death Valley experiences devastating flash floods when rare storms occur. The October 2015 storm dropped 2.7 inches of rain in 5 hours, more than an entire year's average in a single event. The flood caused over $50 million in damage, destroyed sections of roads, severely damaged Scotty's Castle, and reshaped entire canyons. Water rushed through normally dry washes at estimated speeds of 20 to 30 miles per hour, carrying boulders and debris that carved new channels. The flood demonstrated that extreme aridity paradoxically increases flood danger. Hard hard-packed desert soil cannot absorb water quickly, causing nearly 100% runoff when intense rain falls. Climate models suggest these extreme precipitation events may increase in frequency despite overall aridity increasing. 19. The Badwater Basin Salt Pan. The Badwater Basin Salt Pan extends across approximately 200 square miles, with salt deposits reaching depths of up to 9 feet in some locations, representing thousands of years of mineral accumulation. The salt crust you walk on is constantly growing and shrinking. When rare rains flood the basin, water dissolves surface salts, then evaporation recrystallizes them into polygonal patterns and salt pinnacles. The hexagonal patterns result from thermal expansion and contraction cycles. Daytime heat expands the salt, nighttime cooling contracts it, creating cracks that form geometric patterns. Walking on the salt flats, you're stepping on accumulated minerals washed from surrounding mountains over millennia, concentrated by evaporation into one of Earth's purest natural salt deposits. 18. The Racetrack Playa's perfect flatness. Racetrack Playa is so perfectly flat that its 2.5-mile length varies in elevation by less than 3 inches, making it one of the flattest natural surfaces on Earth. This extreme flatness results from the playa being an ancient lake bed where fine sediment settled in, perfectly horizontal layers over thousands of years. The flatness creates ideal conditions for the rock movement phenomenon. Any slope would cause rocks to roll rather than slide. The playa's mud surface dries into a hard crust, but becomes slippery when wet, allowing rocks to glide with minimal friction. Accessing the playa requires 27 miles of rough dirt road from the nearest paved highway, keeping visitor numbers low and preserving the pristine tracks. 17. The Temporary Lake Paradox. When Death Valley receives exceptional winter rains, temporary Lake Manly can form in Badwater Basin, creating a lake at minus 282 feet below sea level, the lowest lake in the Western Hemisphere when it exists. The most recent significant flooding occurred in February 2005 when storms created a lake up to 10 miles long and 3 miles wide in places, though only inches to 2 feet deep. The lake typically evaporates within weeks to months as temperatures rise and evaporation exceeds inflow. During the Ice Age, ending 10,000 years ago, Lake Manly was 600 feet deep and 100 miles long, filling much of Death Valley. Current temporary lakes provide a glimpse of this ancient past while demonstrating the valley's hydrological extremes. 16. The Dante's View Perspective. Dante's View at 5,475 feet elevation provides a panoramic vista where visitors can simultaneously see Badwater Basin 5,700 feet below and Telescope Peak 5,500 feet above, encompassing over 11,000 feet of vertical relief in a single view. This represents one of the most dramatic elevation contrasts visible from any roadside viewpoint in North America. On clear days, the view extends over 100 miles, encompassing 5 mountain ranges. The viewpoint demonstrates Death Valley's geology. Visitors see the valley floor's salt flats, alluvial fans spreading from canyon mouths, and the Panamint Range rising abruptly from the valley floor. The extreme vertical relief visible creates a three-dimensional understanding of the valley's structure, impossible to grasp from valley floor alone. 15. The Eureka Dunes is singing sand. Eureka Dunes, the tallest dunes in California at 680 feet high, produce a low-frequency booming or singing sound when sand avalanches down their faces. This phenomenon occurs when millions of sand grains slide simultaneously, creating friction that generates resonance frequencies audible up to a mile away. The sound resembles a low-pitched organ note or cello and can last several seconds during large avalanches. Only about 30 dune fields worldwide produce singing sand. The sand must have specific grain size, roundness, and moisture content to generate the sound. The remoteness of Eureka Dunes, 10 miles from nearest paved road via rough dirt tracks, means few visitors ever witness this acoustic phenomenon. 14. The Devil's Hole Supreme Court Case. Devil's Hole pupfish became the center of a 1976 Supreme Court case, Kappa Air versus United States, when groundwater pumping for agriculture threatened to lower the water level below the shallow rock shelf where pupfish feed. The court ruled in favor of protecting the pupfish, establishing precedent that federal reserved water rights extend to maintaining minimum water levels necessary for wildlife. This landmark environmental law case demonstrated that a tiny fish in a hole could halt development, influencing water law across the western United States. The case continues today. Ongoing monitoring ensures groundwater levels remain above the critical shelf depth, and access access to Devil's Hole is strictly controlled to prevent disturbance. 13. The charcoal kiln's industrial heritage. 10 massive stone charcoal kilns built in the 1870s stand in Wild Rose Canyon, each 30 feet high and 25 feet in diameter with beehive-shaped architecture. These kilns produce charcoal for silver smelters in nearby mines. Wood was burned in oxygen-limited conditions, creating charcoal, which burns hotter than wood and was essential for smelting ore. Each kiln could produce 25 to 30 bushels of charcoal per firing. The kilns remain remarkably intact 150 years later despite abandonment when the mines closed. The stone construction and remote location preserved them as industrial archaeology, monuments to the mining era that briefly brought thousands of people to Death Valley's mountains before boom turned to bust. 12. The Titus Canyon Narrows. Titus Canyon Road is a 27-mile one-way dirt road descending 5,300 feet through narrow canyon walls that in places are only 20 feet apart with vertical walls rising hundreds of feet. The road follows the road of unsuccessful 1920s mining operations, including the ghost town of Leadfield, a fraudulent mining scheme that lasted only 2 years before collapsing when no valuable ore was found. The narrow section requires careful driving through passages where mirrors touch both walls if vehicles are too wide. Flash flood danger makes the canyon impassable when storms threaten, and the one-way direction prevents turning around. This creates both adventure and risk. Drivers commit to completing the entire route once begun. 11. The Salt Creek Pupfish Endurance. Salt Creek hosts Death Valley pupfish, Cyprinodon salinus, that survive in water 3 times saltier than the ocean, up to 100 parts per thousand versus seawater's 35 parts per thousand, and temperatures reaching 108 degrees Fahrenheit. During winter-spring spawning season, pupfish swim upstream in water so shallow their backs emerge above the surface, creating a remarkable sight of fish essentially crawling over wet mud. The fish reach densities of several thousand per linear mile during spawning peaks. They can survive these extreme conditions through physiological adaptations, including rapid osmoregulation, controlling salt balance in cells, and behavioral thermoregulation, moving to cooler microhabitats during extreme heat. Research shows they can tolerate salinity changes from fresh water to 100 parts per thousand within hours, a range that would kill most fish species instantly. 10. The Darwin Falls Hidden Waterfall. Darwin Falls, a 30-foot waterfall hidden in a narrow canyon, supports the only year-round waterfall in Death Valley National Park, creating a lush riparian habitat with cottonwoods, willows, ferns, and wildlife in stark contrast to the surrounding desert located just a mile away. The falls receive water from springs fed by aquifers in the Panamint Mountains, maintaining constant flow even through multi-year droughts. The oasis habitat supports over 80 bird species, more than anywhere else in the park, including species like yellow warblers and summer tanagers normally found hundreds of miles away in wetter climates. The 1-mile hike to the falls passes through 3 distinct ecosystems: desert scrub, riparian woodland, and finally the waterfall grotto with ferns growing in constant spray. 9. The Zabriskie Point Ancient Lake. Zabriskie Point overlooks Badlands formed from ancient lakebed sediments deposited 5 to 9 million years ago when Death Valley was covered by Lake Furnace, a predecessor to Lake Manly. The eroded landscape creates a maze of gullies, ridges, and valleys in sediments containing volcanic ash layers that geologists use to date the region's tectonic history. The sediments represent millions of years of deposition in a lake environment that repeatedly filled and dried. The formations appear golden yellow in sunrise light, drawing thousands of photographers to capture the landscape. The viewpoint demonstrates how ancient lake beds become colorful badlands through differential erosion, softer layers eroding faster than resistant layers, creating the fluted patterns visible today. 8. The NASA Mars Analog Research. Death Valley serves as a natural laboratory for studying extremophile organisms and testing equipment for Mars missions. NASA uses the valley to test rovers and instruments in conditions approximating Martian surface temperatures and aridity where few Earth organisms survive. The Panamint Mountains and valley floor provide terrain similar to Martian landscapes, with alluvial fans, salt deposits, and badlands resembling features photographed by Mars rovers. Research on Death Valley Valley's thermophilic bacteria in hot springs and halophilic, salt-loving organisms in salt crust provides insights into potential Martian microbial life. The valley represents Earth's closest analog to Mars conditions, making it invaluable for astrobiology research and planetary science. 7. The Mosaic Canyon Marble Walls. Mosaic Canyon features polished marble walls smoothed by flash flood waters over thousands of years. The marble is actually metamorphosed limestone containing colorful mineral inclusions, creating natural mosaics. Veins of calcite, dolomite, and quartz appearing as white, gray, and pink patterns. The canyon narrows to passages where walls are only a few feet apart and polish so smooth they reflect light like glass. Flash floods racing through the narrow canyon during rare storms carry. Abrasive sand that acts like liquid sandpaper, gradually polishing exposed rock surfaces. The 3-mile round-trip hike into the canyon passes through increasingly narrow sections, ending at a dry waterfall too steep to climb, marking the practical end for most hikers. 6. The climate change temperature acceleration. Death Valley has recorded temperatures at or above 130 degrees Fahrenheit 3 times since 2020. 130 degrees Fahrenheit in August 2020, 130 degrees Fahrenheit in July 2021, and 129.2 degrees Fahrenheit in June 2024. Prior to 2020, the park had recorded 130 degrees Fahrenheit plus only once in 107 years, the 1913 record. This suggests increasing frequency of extreme heat events consistent with climate change predictions for arid regions. Research shows Death Valley's average summer temperatures have increased approximately 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1970, with nighttime temperatures rising even faster, reducing overnight cooling. Climate models predict Death Valley could regularly exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-century, potentially reaching 135 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit during extreme heat waves, creating conditions approaching the limits of human survivability even for brief exposure. 5. The 20 Mule Team Canyon Route. 20 Mule Team Canyon is a 2.7-mile one-way dirt road loop through colorful Badlands featuring the same formations that borax miners navigated in the 1880s. The road requires careful driving through tight corners and steep grades, demonstrating the challenges faced by mule teams. The formations display yellow, pink, green, and white layers representing different depositional environments, lakebeds, volcanic ash falls, and mineral precipitates. The canyon name commemorates the actual route used by 20 mule teams hauling borax, though the modern road was constructed later. Driving this route provides visceral understanding of the difficulty of navigating Death Valley in the 1880s when these badlands were obstacles to overcome rather than scenic attractions. 4. The artist's palette hydrothermal origin. Artist's palette's vivid colors don't just sit on the surface. They result from ancient hydrothermal activity when mineral-rich hot water percolated through rock fractures, depositing metals that later oxidized when exposed to air and water. Geological analysis shows this activity occurred millions of years ago when Death Valley was more volcanically active. The deposits contain copper, creating green, iron, creating red/pink/yellow, and manganese, creating purple/black in concentrations high enough that early prospectors attempted mining here. The mining failed. The deposits were too scattered to extract profitably, but the failure preserved the natural palette we see today, demonstrating how economic failure sometimes produces conservation success. 3. The Scotty's Castle Restoration. Scotty's Castle, a 1920s Spanish-style mansion built by Chicago millionaire Albert Johnson in remote Grapevine Canyon, was severely damaged by the October 2015 flash flood that deposited rocks, mud, and debris throughout the structure. The flood destroyed the underground power plant, damaged interior furnishings, and undermined foundation elements. Restoration is expected to cost over $50 million and not reopen until the late 2000s, representing one of the most expensive restoration projects in National Park Service history. The castle's remote location, 50+ miles from park headquarters, complicates repairs. All materials and workers must be transported via narrow canyon roads. The flood demonstrated that even monumental structures cannot withstand Death Valley's rare but catastrophic hydrological events. 2. The park expansion history. Death Valley National Park has expanded dramatically since its original 1933 establishment as Death Valley National Monument, protecting approximately 2 million acres. The 1994 Desert Protection Act added 1.3 million acres and elevated it to national park status, bringing total area to 3.4 million acres. This expansion tripled the protected area and added entire mountain ranges, including the Panamint, Cottonwood, and Last Chance ranges. The expansion also converted wilderness study areas into designated wilderness, protecting them from mining and development. Today, over 91% of the park, 3.1 million acres, is designated wilderness, a higher percentage than almost any other national park, and ensuring these extreme landscapes remain preserved for scientific study and future generations. 1. The deepest time. We've reached the end of our journey, and here's the paradigm-shifting conclusion. Death Valley contains rocks that are 1.7 billion years old, nearly 40% the age of Earth itself, making it one of the places where you can see deepest into geological time. These ancient Precambrian metamorphic rocks visible in the Black Mountains formed when Earth had no complex life, only bacteria and algae, and the atmosphere contained little oxygen. Standing at Badwater Basin, you can see in a single view 1.7 billion years of Earth history exposed in the mountains above, from Precambrian basement rocks through Paleozoic marine sediments, when Death Valley was an ocean floor, to Cenozoic volcanic deposits from just millions of years ago. This makes Death Valley not just a landscape of extreme weather, but a landscape of extreme time, a place where Earth's deep history lies exposed, teaching us that the extreme conditions we witness today are merely the latest chapter in a story spanning billions of years. The rocks have survived supercontinent assembly and breakup, mass extinctions, climate catastrophes, and the entire evolution of complex life. Death Valley's extremes, the heat, the aridity, the depths below sea level, are temporary conditions in deep time. But the rocks remember everything, and they're still here, teaching anyone willing to learn that Earth endures through changes we can barely comprehend. After discovering these 35 incredible facts about Death Valley that break your brain, tell us which one astounded you the most or completely changed your understanding of what's possible in nature's most extreme environments. Leave it in the comments. Let's see which fact resonates with the most people. And if you know an incredible Death Valley fact we missed, or have your own discovery to share from visiting the park, we'd love to hear from you. Your insights make these videos richer for everyone. There's another national park video on screen right now, so you can keep exploring America's most extreme and otherworldly landscapes. But before you go, subscribe and hit the like button so we can continue revealing the hidden stories behind these natural wonders. See you in the next one.